I'm just gonna cut right to it today. What's the most unhinged, wild situation you've ever been in? For me, it was biting into a delicious chocolate chip cookie, only to realize it was actually oatmeal raisin. Yeah, the betrayal. But for a woman who was born under the name Sherri, that kind of unhinged behavior pales in comparison to what she did that completely changed the course of Sherri's life, as well as the lives of her family and even her entire hometown. The year is 2016. Sherri was 34 years old and happily married to a man named Keith Papini. Now, Keith and Sherri were the portrait of white suburban bliss, with a nice home, 2 kids, and by all accounts were an image of a perfect marital happiness. I mean, according to Sherri, the 2 of them were even middle school sweethearts, so how charming. In her now deleted wedding blog, Sherri wrote, quote, "It all started with a first kiss in middle school. He was in 7th grade, I was in 8th. I never imagined my middle school first kiss would turn out to be my husband."
A storybook beginning starting with a 7th grade kiss. When they reconnected years later, Keith even presented the notes she had written him back in middle school.
I remembered that all these years ago, I kept her notes that she wrote me. And I dug them up and I handed her a box, and of course it was like all our little notes back and forth.
Like most middle school flings, Sherri and Keith eventually lost touch, but after a failed marriage in her 20s, Sherri reconnected with Keith by chance, and the 2 locked step with each other like no time was missing at all. And by 2009, the 2 of them got married. They had 2 kids. Like, if you were judging life simply off of social media, everything seemed golden. But of course, we know, never assume that someone's picture perfect life is actually that way in real life. Take a look at this passage from her wedding blog, for instance. Quote, "When I'm around Keith and try to act cool to impress him, it usually turns out like a scene from I Love Lucy. The first time I decided to be romantic at home, I cooked a lovely dinner, lit candles, and had a great movie picked out. After dinner, we went upstairs to put in the movie. I had decided I was going to go in for a kiss, gave him that look, leaned over the bed, and fell right off the edge." I'm sure our neighbors heard the thud I made. The rest of the night, Keith couldn't look at me without grinning and laughing. Now, listen, objectively, this is a very cute story, right? Like, it paints the picture of a couple with a character, a couple who love each other despite, any embarrassing experiences shared between the 2 of them. But unfortunately, even this love had some limits. Don't they all? But Keith and Sherri didn't know that yet. And at the peak of their love, something unexpected happened. Sherri went missing, and what happened next will absolutely shock you. But first, oh hi, hello, it's Swoop, and welcome to the dark waters of the Suspool, the place where everything and everyone is sus, maybe even us. Come on in, the water's fine. All right, welcome back, Suspirians. I hope you have come prepared for the most unhinged story ever. Like, when I first heard about this and the twist, oh my gosh, I literally had no words. If you're new here, welcome to my second channel. On my main channel, Swoop, I do full-length deep dives, and over here we dip into the dark waters of bizarre, twisted, sometimes scary, always sus stories while trying to figure out who or what belongs in the cesspool. So, my dear Suspirians, feel free to guess along with us in the comments about where the true sus is as we go along in the story, and your opinions might change. And as the story unfolds, let's find out if our first guess was actually correct. And no spoilers if you know what's going on. Or, just have fun in the comments. And if you're into mind-bending, dark, and twisted tales, subscribe to this channel, bring a towel, and go ahead and just tickle that like button, okay? Give her some compliments. She likes it just right under the chin there. Just yeah, she likes that. Okay, we're gonna dig into this story, but first I have a little confession to make. I'm exhausted. Like, there is so much going on with life, work, family, everything that, honey, I'm just a little tired. Like, sometimes I feel like if you ask me to make one more decision today, I might just spin off into the galaxy, which is why I love Factor. Factor makes meeting your nutrition goals easier than ever by delivering fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals right to your doorstep to save you time and to help you enjoy every meal and get on with life, honey. With Factor, you can skip the time at the grocery stores and take the stress out of meal planning, the chopping, the prepping, and the cleanup with delicious, ready-to-eat meals delivered right to your door and are ready in just 2 minutes, so all you have to do is heat and enjoy while you relax. With over 35 meals to choose from per week, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan and veggie, and more, you can skip the overpriced takeout trap, okay? Factor is cheaper and better tasting with chef-crafted, restaurant-quality meals delivered right to your door. Factor has seriously changed the game for me. It saves me so much time. Y'all, I had the most amazing white cheddar chicken with broccoli, grits, and roasted green beans and almonds one night. Oh my gosh, it was so good. And I had the most delicious jalapeno lime cheddar chicken with spicy cilantro cauliflower rice the next. Oh my gosh, number one, I would never cook something like this because I can't cook, and number two, it was so good. I've literally never had a single bad dish from Factor, who is now, fun fact, owned by HelloFresh, with a wider array of meal plans to choose from, so there's something for everyone. And now all of you can enjoy both brands at a discount along with me. So if you want the joy of not having to think about your meals, saving time, money, and skipping the grocery store, head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code SWOOP250, that's SWOOP, TOO50, to get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders. That is an incredible deal. So that's code SWOOP250 at factor75.com to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month of orders, and treat yourself, honey. You deserve it. Okay, let's dive in to the cesspool. It was November 2nd, 2016, when Sherri Papini went for a jog around the neighborhood. According to Sherri herself, she's an avid jogger, so it stands to reason that there was nothing unusual about this choice. However, when Keith got off of work from his job at Best Buy, he was a little surprised to find that Sherri wasn't home. And that surprise turned to worry when she wouldn't answer his calls or texts either. So he used the Find My iPhone feature on his iPhone and saw that she was at the intersection of Sunrise Drive and Old Oregon Trail, which was a mile or so away from their house, which is also where their mailbox is. It's one of those neighborhoods where, all the mailboxes are kind of clustered together near the main road as you drive into the community. So you get your mail and then you drive a length of road to get home. Now, Keith arrives at this intersection only to discover to his horror that Sherri isn't there, but her iPhone was, alongside with her earbuds and a few strands of her hair stuck to them. So Keith immediately called police. I mean, can you imagine, you haven't heard from your wife, trying to figure out where she is, you go down and you find her phone, earbuds, and some hair attached? I don't know about you, but that would freak me all the way out. So he calls the police.
Oh, can I help you?
Yeah, I just got home from work, and my wife wasn't there, which is unusual, and my kids should have been there by now from daycare. So I was like, oh, maybe she went on a walk. I couldn't find her, so I called the daycare to see what time she picked up the kids. The kids were never picked up, so I got freaked out, so I hit the Find My iPhone app thing, and it said that it showed her phone at our end of our driveway. We don't have really good service.
Okay.
Not the end of our driveway, but the end of our street. So I just drove down there, and I saw her phone with her headphones because she started running again, and I found her phone, and it's got hair ripped out of it, in the headphones. So I'm totally freaking out, thinking somebody grabbed her.
And shortly after, a huge manhunt was underway to look for Sherri. I mean, the entire community searched up and down everywhere. Missing persons posters were made. Keith spoke with press as wide-ranging as ABC News, Fox News, and even international outlets like The Independent. This was such a massive story, it even made the cover of People magazine.
Same last name?
Yes.
She white, female?
Yes.
What's her date of birth?
It is June 11th, 1982.
It was the sudden disappearance of someone in the community Redding adored so much, and so completely at random was a massive, massive news story. A reward was offered regarding information on her disappearance, and there was even a very successful GoFundMe set up to help Keith find Sherri, a GoFundMe which raised nearly $50,000 at the time. Now, 3 weeks later, it's the morning of Thanksgiving Day, 2016. The community in Redding was holding their annual turkey trot race with a twist that at the end, there would be a big community-wide releasing of balloons to raise awareness of Sherri's disappearance, which is honestly a very sweet thing to see a community come together together to do and support like that. Now, what the community didn't know was that Sherri was already spotted around 4:30 a.m. that morning walking along Country Road 17 near Interstate 5 in Yolo County, 150 miles south of where she vanished. Okay, I'm sorry, I just have to. Yolo County, can you imagine? I mean, you only live once and you're gonna do it in Yolo County. I'm just saying, okay, I couldn't resist. I'm sorry. Sarcasm sometimes, it's my coping thing, okay?
Hey, what's hurting? You're chained up.
She's chained up?
Now, according to later reports, as well as CCTV footage obtained from that morning, which is honestly very, very eerie looking footage, Sherri ran from where she had escaped her captors, who I will talk about in just a minute, banged on the doors of a nearby church before running to the freeway and attempting to flag down some motorists. Now, eventually, a truck driver stopped for her and tended to her until California Highway Patrol arrived and can take her to safety.
My home phone rang. I pick it up. It was my wife screaming in the background, yelling my name. And a CHP officer said, I need you to be calm. I need you to be calm.
Well, are you panicked at first? You're hearing her scream.
I'm panicked, but I'm happy because I at this point, this is the first time I've heard her voice. I know she's alive.
And you hear?
And I hear screaming. So then I get the phone and, oh my God, honey. And of course she's screaming. It's very emotional. And I love you, I love you, I love you. Oh my God, you're here, you're back, where are you?
Now, of course, as you imagine, the news spread very fast and very furiously. After 3 long, miserable weeks, Sherri was back and she was safe. And what could have been a tragedy for Keith and the Redding community and her family was looking more and more like a Thanksgiving miracle. I mean, honestly, can just picture this, right? Your loved one is missing for 3 weeks, the absolute torment that would be mentally, and you find them alive and safe. It's just kind of holy shit, that is just super intense, right? And you'd just be really excited.
We are very ecstatic to report that Sherri Papini has been located and has been reunited with her husband and family on this day of Thanksgiving.
But what none of them knew, however, was that Sherri's story was only just beginning, and it was about to get a whole lot worse. For starters, when Keith and the police finally saw Sherri for the first time, they were shocked to find that she was in a truly disturbing physical state. Now, we're not going to be graphic here, but it started with her hair. Sherri was known around town for keeping her blonde hair very long, but Keith told ABC News that when he found her, her hair had been carelessly chopped off. And then on top of that, court documents would later say that she lost, quote, a considerable amount of weight, weighing only 87 pounds at the time that she was found, which sounds dangerously thin. That's not even mentioning the injuries, of which she had many. There was a chain around her waist and one arm. There were cuts, scratches, a swollen nose, rashes, markings, so many bruises, and a Bible verse burnt and branded onto her shoulder. Now, obviously, it was a wonderful thing that Sherri was back, but she was in a terrible state. So what the hell happened? Police asked Sherri this question, and here's what she had to say. Now, Sherri had a few interviews over the course of the following year as police investigated her claims, and in each interview, she had a lot of story to tell. So in the interest of time, here are the basic claims that Sherri made in regards to her disappearance. Now, all of these facts come directly from a criminal complaint relating to the case, and we will, of course, get into some of the footage. Now, according to Sherri, the morning of November 4th was a normal morning for her. She dropped her kids off at daycare, cleaned the house, and wrapped a Christmas present for Keith. Around 11 a.m., she went for a run, claiming she was training for a local 5K race, but when she got near the end of Sunrise Drive, Sherri claimed that a dark SUV drove past her before backing up to catch up with her. Now, a woman from the front called for help, so Sherri approached the vehicle, only to see what Sherri alleged were 2 masked Hispanic women, one of whom was holding a bang-bang gun. Now, in response, Sherri claims that she quickly ducked, then gently sat her phone and her earbuds down because they didn't show signs of damage, and pulled out some of her hair to leave behind.
We're looking for a dark-colored SUV with 2 Hispanic females armed with a handgun.
This is what she's explaining happened, that she pulled out some hair and set everything down and left it there, which, yeah, it's like, okay, if you think that someone is threatening you, the first thing you would think is to not separate yourself from your phone where you could call for help, but everyone's different. Everyone responds to scary situations differently. After allegedly doing this, Sherri's memory apparently became a blur. She says she remembers ending up in the vehicle with a pillowcase over her head and that the road she was taken down was a long and windy one. Since she couldn't see her abductors, she had to rely mostly on what she heard along the way. She said the two of them were speaking Spanish and listening to what Sherri described as, and to be clear, this is Sherri describing this, not me, quote, that really annoying Mexican music, end quote. There's no such thing as a perfect victim. There's no such thing as a perfect victim. There is no such thing as a perfect... Okay, I'm back. All right, let's continue. Sherri eventually woke up zip-tied in a room where she could sometimes see her masked assailants, one of whom allegedly had long curly hair, and the other older woman allegedly had thick black hair with gray streaks. Now, eventually, she was transferred to what Sherri describes as a closet with a bucket of cat litter for her to use as a restroom. According to court documents, Sherri, quote, described the closet as containing shelves and a metal pole to which the woman hooked a cable and a chain with the other end of the chain hooked around her waist. There was enough length on it for Papini to reach the bed, but she couldn't reach the door. Now, what makes this story even worse is that Sherri was allegedly fed as little food as possible, which she described as a scoop of rice or a tortilla at a time, and that after a while they took her kitty litter away and forced her to wear an adult diaper. Now, Sherri attempted to escape multiple times, according to her, but was caught in each instance and punished, once with her hair being chopped off and another with her being branded with the Bible verse. And what makes it all worse is that with the very little Spanish Sherri understood, she was able somehow to her horror to figure out the truth behind her kidnapping. Sherri claims that these women kidnapped her for the purpose of human trafficking and that they were going to sell her to a police officer. On Thanksgiving morning, 2016, Sherri alleged that she was in her closet when out of nowhere she heard a gunshot followed by the sounds of shuffling and keys being taken off the table and then music, followed by the younger woman coming in and feeding Sherri, who felt what she described as dizzy, nauseous, and yucky before passing out. Sometime later, Sherri alleges that she was awakened by a hit to the face that broke her nose and was eventually placed into a vehicle that she claimed smelled like sewage and dirt. The car began to move and Sherri was tied in the back of the car, and out of nowhere, the car stopped. Now, Sherri says she heard 3 snips, snip, snip, snip sounds, the door opening, and a voice scream, "Out!" Sherri then fell out of the car right onto the highway that she was later found on. Now, if you couldn't tell, Sherri dropped a very elaborate, shocking story on investigators, right? It is a horrible story. By all accounts, it was a harrowing, disturbing, and very detailed story, and one that captured the nation's interest all over again. Like, Sherri's story received international attention and even received $30,000 from the California Victim Compensation Board for her disturbing experience. And of course, a new manhunt began to find the women responsible, something that Alan Ernesto Phillips, the co-founder of the Northern Hispanic Latino Coalition, told ABC News completely shook the Latino community in Redding out of fear that Latino women were going to be arrested or worse for their part in the kidnapping or being accused of being a part of this, of a kidnapping of a pretty white woman. And as expected, Keith, Sherri's husband, was interviewed by the police and also given a lie detector test a week after she went missing, as well as some other interviews. And as you might expect, there were many people who found his behavior sus. I mean, after all, it's the people you know usually, right? And it's often the spouse who's doing something terrible to a spouse.
Let me, since you're at the top, let me ask you, what do you guys think? Are you even allowed to tell me?
As of right now?
Yeah. I think someone grabbed her. I mean, is that?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
I'm not gonna lie to you.
I think 2 people, actually, because she's a fighter.
I'm not gonna I don't think she left on her own.
Oh,
I don't think
no.
she volunteered.
Definitely not.
I've been just as much as I've been crawling. And you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
No fingerprints.
we've been verbally told there's nothing alarming. And that's for you to know.
Oh, yeah, I won't share.
Okay? I'll tell you that right now. Okay? But I'm waiting to see it in print. I've asked them to do some follow-up.
Craziest one you've been involved in?
Unfortunately, no.
Ugh. Yeah.
Like I said,
It's the least amount of evidence, though. I bet. No?
like we've said, we have started
This
with
guy, like, vanished.
we've started with zero and ended with everything. We've started with everything and ended with
If
zero.
you could give me one other thing and I might not like it. Was that a week long? Was it a month long? Or did it take like 6 months?
I have a case that's open a year.
Ah, man, this is gonna be just brutal. I know you guys are doing everything.
Yeah.
I'm never stepping on. I like you, like I said a couple times. Like I can see us hanging
We're
out.
not these questions. We're not thinking you're doubt of us. We know you're just you want every resource, and when we want something, what do we want to see? We want to see results. So I want to see. You want to see everybody that's working on this case.
Okay, so we're going to pause for 1 second. In this moment in time, who or what do you think belongs in the Suspool? There's a lot going on here, right? I've been keeping this pretty close to the chest for the entirety of this story the best that I can. But the truth is, Sherri's story raised a lot of red flags for a lot of people for a lot of reasons. Now, number one, we know that oftentimes when women go through something terrible, or even men when there's victims of something, a lot of times people just automatically don't want to believe them. But besides that, there were inconsistencies in her story, like Sherri saying that she chose to set down her phone or that she was told to. There was the unusually descriptive nature of all but the most important parts of her story. Like, all of this may sound like nitpicking, and to be honest, it kind of is, but all of these details painted all of the flags, all of the 50 shades of red to the community whose name knows a little thing about Redding, okay? Redding, I'm talking, okay, that was a really awful attempt at trying to ease the tension with a bad joke. Okay, anyways. So an investigation obviously began. Investigators did a DNA test on Sherri's clothes and found no other woman's DNA on the clothes. Very interesting, but did find a hit for a man who, unfortunately, wasn't identified in the criminal database. So that's weird as right? You would probably be safe to expect to find some kind of woman's DNA on her, given that there were two women perpetrators here, right? But they did find, upon surveying her cell phone, that she had actually been in touch with two men she had stored on her phone under females' names. What the hell is going on? Now, one man was someone that Sherri met in 2011 and had been flirting with over text for years. Another was an ex-boyfriend who the FBI claimed the ex described Sherri as, quote, an attention-hungry person who told stories to try to get people's attention, and that Sherri, quote, fabricated stories of being the victim of abuse from her family, father, and then the ex-boyfriend after the couple broke up. Well, I mean, this is just what some disgruntled ex-boyfriends say, right? And when the FBI interviewed Sherri's first husband and he said Sherri had a history of lying, that's no big deal, right? And also that Sherri's friends described her as crazy and wild, who would, quote, make up lies, particularly about being the victim of abuse, especially as a youth. But that's just jealous haters, right? You know, like her friend Asia, who said, quote, when things got hard, she would just run away. I mean, what a bitchy thing to say, right?
She's a compulsive liar. She would, not talk to you for 3 or 4 days, and then all of a sudden there'd be some fantastical story about what happened. She was faking a heart condition at one point, and eventually, not only me, but a bunch of people figured out that that was not true.
But the thing is, while the FBI was logging these stories and inconsistencies in her story, people like Tim Scarborough were also noticing the inconsistencies. Tim was a local resident who didn't think Sherri's story added up, so he started looking into it himself, even going as far as to visit the spot Sherri claimed to have been abducted from and the church that she claimed to have pounded on the door of the morning that she was found. And Tim wrote a now deleted article on his personal blog outlining the many inconsistencies in her story and was alarmed to find that the article went viral in just a few days, racking up nearly 50,000 views, a few hundred comments, and a whole lot of threats, including, according to The Independent, from Sherri's own sister, which, I mean, you know, their sister's like defending her sister, you know, I get it. And like, yeah, to be fair, the general sentiment of the people attacking Tim for this, like, you know, to certain degrees, I get it. It's not great, and you certainly shouldn't be issuing threats, but I understand why people would emotionally respond that way. Like, I really do. Like, it can be a real kind of like edgelord behavior to attack an alleged victim like this. And Tim was not prepared for the backlash that kind of contrarian countertake can bring someone. So he deleted the blog, but it like kind of already opened up a hornet's nest in the process, inspiring many internet sleuths to take a stab at the case. And, you know, that's always a good thing when people on the internet are, I mean, sometimes it results in really excellent findings, but oftentimes it just is you know, there was a Facebook group, another blogger, YouTube videos, news editorials, every avenue imaginable began researching the strange case of Sherri Papini. People even began publicly asking Keith's GoFundMe page if Sherri was telling the truth. But Sherri herself knew she was in a no-win situation, so she said nothing. She faded into the background, and over time, people forgot about the case as they moved on to other news stories. And, you know, really all that mattered was that Sherri was home and safe now. Oh, and the lie detector test that her husband Keith took a week after her disappearance, well, he passed it.
You know, you spoke to him about the polygraph results.
Yes.
Okay. So,
I mean, I passed, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
you did. I can tell you with great authority that I'm spending money left and right to find your wife. Okay. I have a wife that jogs. He has a wife that jogs. I had to look my wife in the eye last night and explain to her, we'll get this squared away. Okay. So it's resources is not an issue. You don't have to worry about, are you guys doing this? Are you guys contacting this? Okay. I'm telling you right now, there's things that we are doing that I cannot tell you about.
Okay.
Okay. Top secret. Can't tell you about.
So at this point, who or what do you think currently belongs in the Suspool? Is it Sherri, Keith, both of them, none of them, the women in the SUV? What do you think? The truth at last is what I would have said if the FBI hadn't gotten involved. Well, shittlebits. Like, the Suspool candidates are really getting very, very sussy over here. So now it's important to note that according to local sheriffs, it cost over $150,000 in taxpayer dollars to track down Sherri, which also means time and resources that were not allocated to anything else, meaning other people who needed help with things, they weren't getting it. The fact that police were unable to get so much as a single lead on her led to years of criticism leveled against Reading police, and the handling of Sherri's case was seen as a massive embarrassment. In fact, it took like 4 years for there to be a major breakthrough in any way in this case, and it came as a result of something called genetic genealogy. Now, if you're a true crime head, and you might be if you watch any content on my main channel, then you're probably familiar with this since it's what led to the catching of like the Golden State Killer. CNN defines genetic genealogy as, quote, an emerging field that combines DNA evidence and traditional genealogy to find biological connections between people. Now, they continue by saying, over the past decade, companies like 23andMe and Ancestry have encouraged people to spit into a tube and send it off for analysis. These companies analyze a customer's DNA and send back information on their ethnic heritage, genetic health risks, and family story, as well as a raw data file of their DNA. The practice is increasingly popular and has become a big business. 23andMe says it has over 5 million customers, while Ancestry says about 10 million people have used its services to have their DNA tested. Genetic genealogists can use these raw data files to further learn about people's, family trees. So it's very interesting stuff. And long story short, it's researching DNA made available through genealogy-based websites to find a lead on criminal cases involving DNA not available in the criminal database. So yeah, just, be aware that if you spit in a cup, depending on what you're signing on, they might be able to use it in criminal searches. I don't know, just check in, just do your research. But in a story like this, where there's male DNA not available in the criminal database, something like this could be a godsend, right? And in fact, it was, since investigators immediately figured out that the male DNA on Sherri's ruined clothes was, interestingly, her ex-boyfriend, James Reyes.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
James, are we entering the Suspool? Come on down! Now, when investigators had first reached out to James as a result of her text messages, he had claimed that he hadn't spoken to her in years. Okay, so big bad boo-boo, James. Care to spit in the sus cup? That's weird. Let's keep going. And so, in light of this recent development, Mr. I swear officer, I haven't talked to her in years, had no choice but to open up about what really happened. Let's hear it, James. So the truth is, around the time Sherri went missing, she began communicating heavily with James and told him that she was being abused by Keith and needed to escape. Now, James asked her what he could do to help and claims that Sherri suggested he rent a car to pick her up in Redding, which he did. Once he picked her up at the spot she'd left her phone, the two of them drove 9 hours south to his apartment in Costa Mesa for a few weeks. Now, according to James, Sherri began showcasing troubling behavior right away. She began harming herself, bruising herself, burning. And when she asked him to hurt her, he agreed to. Reluctantly, as he says, but listen, I said this story is wild, right? So like, he said he agreed to help in the harm, especially when she had the idea of James branding her. Yeah, I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna set it over here and we're gonna leave that for now. We're gonna leave that for now. Now, I know all of this sounds like a likely excuse, and maybe you're thinking, oh, she was just maybe covering up for her abusive ex. Well, no. First of all, Sherri had since admitted all of this, but on top of that, there's also the fact that investigators confirmed all of this via his phone records, work schedule, rental car receipts, his odometer, his toll tickets. I mean, they even interviewed his damn cousin who confirmed, oh, Sherri? Yeah, she was at the house. So like, yeah, investigators had a much clearer picture of the story now, and it didn't match Sherri's like at all. So they called her and Keith in for questioning, telling her everything James said, and Sherri denied it at first, saying she flirted with other men, but Your Honor, I swear there were 2 Mexican women listening to annoying Mexican music. Her words, not mine.
I don't want her to get in trouble.
She's not going to get in trouble. So the DNA came back to James Reyes.
The DNA that was on you belongs to James Reyes.
The picture, and can I get the picture? The picture of the table is James Reyes' little brother. He died recently. We talked to him. He's been on a polygraph. We talked to everybody around him. We have the rental agreements, phone rental, the car rental agreements. We have everything that says that he said he told the truth.
That's James' brother, deceased Nick.
So everything, you've told us so many truths in this situation. The reason why you can describe the room is because you stayed in the room in the dark for hours, for days on end. The reason why you lost so much weight is because you stopped eating. The reason why you got a rash on your arm is because you cleaned his house. The reason why the brand is because he went to the store, bought the branding tools, and branded you. The reason why your nose was broke is because of a hockey stick. I know all of those things, and I know there was no sex. I know all of that because he passed a polygraph test that said it's not an abduction. She asked me to come get her.
No.
I rented a car.
No.
I drove up and picked her up. He passed the polygraph test, Sherri.
If that's not what happened, what did happen, Sherri?
I don't know.
Eventually, she let something interesting slip, though, saying, quote, I don't understand. There's no way this is James. He loves me.
No, there's no way it's James. There's no way. There's no way.
The DNA doesn't lie.
His DNA
was on you.
There's no way.
Robert saw you in the house while you were down there. While everything
It's
spun out of
Robert.
control, his cousin. Why everything ran out of control on the initial.
There's no way.
It's 100% Robert's or James's DNA.
We even collected blonde hairs from the room.
There's no way it's James. There's no way.
Tell you that it is.
Why are you saying it's not James?
It's me.
Yeah, I'm sure Keith was thrilled by all of this. When faced with that and what investigators were saying, that it obviously didn't sit right with her husband, Keith Papini. All along, Keith had been Sherri's biggest cheerleader and advocate, even though people thought, this guy's weird, he's creepy, what's going on? But now it hit him like a ton of bricks. His wife had lied to him, his family, the community, and like honestly the entire world at this point. And she was openly lying to investigators time and time and time and time again, to their faces, to his face, even when they confronted her with clear evidence.
How about the bathroom? What'd that look like?
It was always hands on the wall. That very first shower that I had hurt really bad because the burn was fresh and the water was running over it and there was other open wounds, and it just, I can't remember if I was hit with something, if I was stuck with something, and that's what I was asking too. If I was tased, wouldn't I remember? Or would there be a scar? Would there be a mark?
You told us what happened because you did go in a dark room. That's true. You did lay in the backseat of the car. That's true. You did lose weight. You were branded. Your hair was cut. You did have bruises all over. But how those bruises got there are because you did it and James did something. The reason why your nose got broke is because you held the hockey stick to your face. The reason why the brand is in a straight line is because he did it. He described exactly where it was. He told us exactly how he did it, where he did it, how he did it. Only you and I and maybe 5 other people know where the brand was. He told me immediately.
Can I talk to you outside real quick? Or wait?
That's fine. The fears of how out of control everything got, the fear of all these things is the reality. And the only people that can slow the train down is you and I.
Now, according to many sources, Keith actually straight up left the police interview in shock, later telling investigators when he returned, quote, "I'm the idiot husband who stayed around this whole time," which is a very sad thing to hear that he felt about himself.
When you first encountered her in the hospital, what was your first instinct?
When I pulled back the curtain and I saw her and I saw the look in her eyes, I felt in that moment that she was lying. And it wasn't until when I really got close and I could just see the amount of injuries, bruises, burns to her body. And it was a shock to me. And I remember thinking how horrible of me to even think that she could have done this to herself. She made us all believe that her story was true. Every single day she committed to the lie. Let everybody know like how convincing Sherri was all those years and how I believed everything that she was telling me.
And so remember Keith's police interrogation footage that I played earlier that was conducted about 1 week after she went missing when they were all looking for her? Like, remember how strange Keith's behavior looked to a lot of people? Well, does this footage look different to you now?
Let me, since you're at the top, let me ask you, what do you guys think? Are you even allowed to tell me?
As
Like,
of
what
right-
do you think
as of right
happened? Yeah. I think someone grabbed her. I mean, is that?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
I'm not gonna lie to you.
I think 2 people actually, because she's a fighter.
I'm not gonna. I don't think she left on her own. I don't think she volunteered.
Definitely not.
I've been just as much as I've been crawling. And you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
No fingerprints.
we've been verbally told there's nothing alarming, and that's for you to know.
Oh, yeah, I won't share.
Okay. I'll tell you that right now. Okay. But I'm waiting to see it in print. I've asked them to do some follow up.
It's fascinating and very tragic, right? Like, this is a clear example that people behave in all sorts of ways when they're under extreme stress, and what might look like suspicious guilt or like odd behavior and is like, ooh, like, you know, sounds he was making and stuff might actually just be really nervous stress energy that he's like, doesn't know how else to expel. You know what I mean?
Stuff.
Going through some stuff, we come up on, there's a huge abandoned warehouse I'm sure you're aware of, and it's got all these padlocks on it. I'm losing my mind. I'm gonna tell you some stories since now you know it's not me. And maybe I have my CCW on you, maybe I don't. But the door was like kind of open, and he threw that thing up, and we went in there, and there was a camper, and I thought that's where she was, and she wasn't in there.
And you don't want to be the guy. You don't want to be that guy.
I know, but yeah.
And it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
You need to focus on your house, your kids, your family. Get out of the woods. I promise you.
I was like, maybe just hiking it is fun, reminiscing on my old buddies, but man, that was brutal.
Like, I literally can't even imagine what this man went through, like, at all. Like, discovering that your wife was talking to her ex is one thing, but then finding out that she faked her disappearance after going through weeks of believing your wife was disappeared. Like, and then you find out she was doing it with her ex, and she's saying that her ex loves her, like, and then she was harming herself for this. I just, like, what? Like, why? Like, what? Sherri, what the is going on? So, to nobody's surprise, it was over for Sherri Papini. If you guessed it at the beginning, you got it. Sherri was dunked straight into the dark waters of the Suspool, like fully submerged, not a nose plug, a swim cap, and nothing. She got it, but we're still not done.
Well, there was 3 stages to the investigation, and one when she went missing and the search for Sherri and deployment of resources for that. The second stage was actually trying to locate the perpetrators, the suspects that were described and the sketches that were drawn. And then the third phase is where it really started to come into light, and that was when Sherri Papini reappeared. The evidence was starting to be collected and all the facts were being vetted out. And that's when things really started taking a turn in the investigation.
So Sherri was arrested and charged in March 2022 for making false statements to investigators as well as mail fraud. Now, according to prosecutors, Sherri's hoax ended up costing taxpayers over $300,000, not just from the California's Victims Compensation Board, but from freaking Social Security disability income. Like, it wasn't just Keith that was properly pissed. The city of Redding was properly pissed. Internet supporters were properly pissed. Other victims were poised and properly pissed, including a couple by the name of Terry and Marilyn Smith, whose daughter Tara had gone missing in the 90s and told ABC News that Sherri's arrest was, quote, kind of a slap in the face. It just kind of makes a mockery out of anyone who's really lost a person. And I couldn't agree more, especially given the sheer volume of missing people of color who never get so much as like a blip of coverage in like a newspaper where no one really reads newspapers anymore, let alone getting national coverage for something, right? Like, it's such a pervasive issue. And I can't even think about like what are kids. We're not even gonna go there. It's a lot. Now, U.S. District Court Judge William Shub ordered Sherri Papini to pay $309,000 in restitution, but wondered out loud if she would even be able to pay that. Quote, I would ask rhetorically who was going to employ her in the future. O-U-C-H. I don't think I've ever spelled ouch out loud, but there it is. What happens with the GoFundMe? I just realized I didn't even look into this. I don't know what happened when like the GoFundMe, and it's like, because like her family was victimized by what she did, but it was based on the idea that she had been kidnapped. So I don't actually know what happens. If y'all know what happened to the GoFundMe money, let me know in the comments. Sherri was sentenced to serve 18 months in prison, which was actually double what prosecutors originally asked for. So that judge did not like miss Sherri, and that prison time was to be followed by 36 months of supervised release after she pleaded guilty.
The California mom who faked her 2016 disappearance was sentenced to 18 months in prison, more than double what prosecutors asked for.
Hey, good morning, George. The judge calling a very tearful Sherri Papini a manipulator, and that stiff sentence ending a 6-year saga. But it also allowed for a trove of evidence used against her to be unsealed. That included images of the severe beating she inflicted on herself and a shocking video in which police finally confront her with the truth.
Now, at her hearing, Sherri read a statement, part of which read, quote, I am so sorry to the many people who have suffered because of me, the people who sacrificed for the broken woman I was, the people who gave willingly to help me in a time that I so desperately needed help. Thank you all. Listen, I have thoughts about that statement. I have a lot of thoughts. When I initially read that statement, I thought, wow, this is a whole lot of like, oh, poor me centered in that statement. You know, the people who gave willingly to help me in a time that I so desperately needed help, when objectively you didn't need any help because this was all a hoax that you plotted, planned, and carried out to the detriment of your husband, your children, your family, and your community. But there is also more to my thoughts, which we'll dip into in a moment, because there's obviously a lot of other nuance to consider in this story. Now, in August 2023, Sherri was released, and according to KCRA in Sacramento, will be at a location overseen by the Residential Reentry Management Field Office in the same city. Now, when it comes to what Sherri's husband Keith did, y'all want to take a guess? Yeah, he divorced. Le divorcé. He divorced her. He left. He's like, I'm done. I'm out.
Keith Papini filing for divorce from his wife of more than 12 years, requesting sole custody of the couple's 2 young children. In court documents obtained by ABC News, Keith writing, "I must act decisively to protect my children from the trauma caused by their mother."
And honestly, good for him. And again, there are kids involved here. This is not, in my estimation, this is not the type of person that seems safe for the well-being of the children. But I can't even fathom the bat hellfire that this man went through emotionally and on such a national scale as well. But would you believe, and of course, because the Suspool be sussin', all right, that during the divorce, they actually went to court because Sherri wanted to fight over money that she claims he owed her.
Now, the couple in a heated fight over finances, including insurance money paid to the couple for home repairs when married. Sherri asking for her share of it, but Keith says that money is gone, in part to living expenses, like $500 a day to his mother while they lived with her. Sherri seen crying next to her attorneys, claiming she knew nothing about the payments and that Keith's control over their finances left her nothing in their divorce. But on the stand, Sherri repeatedly invoked the Fifth Amendment when asked about her own finances and how she paid her part of family expenses after she claimed she was kidnapped.
I just... Suspool with all of it. The story of Sherri Papini is it's bizarre, and maybe warrants some sympathy for Sherri. Any of you felt that? Okay, hear me out, because we like to look at a lot of perspectives here. It is a mess, I'll be honest, and what she did was diabolical to her family, in my opinion, but I can't ignore that she physically harmed herself in some pretty severe ways. It has to speak to mental health, right? To some degree, listen, I'm not a mental health professional. I'm not a licensed psychologist, psychiatrist, clinician, but that seems extreme. It seems extreme for a hoax, especially when it's you could have carried out the hoax without doing that to yourself. Now, I'm not going to make any excuses for her behavior. And in the same breath, I can't help but wonder, this woman invented an entire story out of thin air over something she claimed happened to her for reasons that are still not entirely clear. Although in her statement, she's saying she desperately needed help, but she committed to that story through and through. Now, although investigators claim that Sherri's abuse allegations held no merit, I can't take those away from her because there's no evidence to suggest it's a complete lie as well. It just gets into very messy gray areas, and this is a toe dip in the waters. We're not doing a full deep dive here. If she did this to get away from an abusive situation, or if she did this as a massive cry of help, perhaps, I don't know, in some depressive state or some manic state, I don't know, then there's a bigger tragedy in this story than the headlines would even have you thinking about. And if those allegations are true, then that's obviously awful. But it's also possible that never happened to Sherri, and this is all purely just a lie. But then I gotta ask, why? Why the lie? Is there potentially some mental illness that would drive Sherri to create such a monstrous lie, but beyond just the lie, to physically do those things to herself? That part really troubles me, and I don't want to just entirely cut off potential compassion if there's something mentally going on here. You know what I mean? Again, doesn't excuse the behavior. She really hurt a lot of people doing this and with these lies, but to go to such extremes against her own body is just, it's just wow. But also in the same breath, Sherri, baby, 2 Mexican women, the annoying Mexican music, being force-fed tortillas and beans. Like, the hell we doing, Sherri? Like, I don't even have time to go over your alleged blog from 2006 where you talk about the problems with Mexican women, according to you, showcasing that you have a running trend of likely, pretty obviously racist behavior of bringing down Hispanic and Latina women at all costs as if they don't have enough to deal with on a daily basis. We just have to be real here. A beautiful white woman who goes missing and gets national attention and returns blaming Hispanic and Latina women is really effing dangerous to the horribly marginalized and vulnerable brown communities where ignorant people might lash out and target innocent Hispanic and Latina women just for existing and minding their own business because there are assholes in the world who are looking for any and every excuse to be racist. Like, I hate this part of the story. I very much hate this part of the story. And it's not the first time that we've seen people blame people of color for their own bullshit. The thing is, dear Sherri, even if you were possibly in a bad situation, you abandoned your kids and you lied not only to their community, but to the entire world.
The amount of fear that our family lived in that was fake is excruciating. I mean, the security at our house, new doors, new locks, new lights, new cameras.
But has Sherri ever apologized to you or the children?
No, never. She has no remorse that I have ever witnessed or seen.
I so very much want to find the empathy to the situation that she was in, but also the fact is her lie was a bit too specific and it was a bit too specifically targeted and harmful. Other people get affected by stuff like this. The story of Sherri Papini is a fascinating one because it's a cautionary tale on why we need to be more open to the questioning of the stories we're being told. But at the same time, it's a mess, right? It also underscores how liars like this can do great damage to real victims because every time someone lies about being a victim, at least with the kidnapping for her, it gives people the opportunity to then just blanket decide to not believe real victims. Like, we talk about this a lot. It's a good practice to approach all victims with empathy, understanding, and believing, but believing victims should not mean turning off our total and entire willingness to listen to the evidence that is presented and the testimonies of those who are accused, and to approach these stories a little more slowly rather than like instantaneously deciding like who done it in a snap judgment. If something sounds like I don't know, and if it smells like and if it tastes like then it might be It doesn't mean immediately tell someone you're making this up. It just means let's digest this a little bit. What's going on? And all parties involved do have a right to share their side, right? That's how our justice system is supposed to work anyways. It's okay to ask questions. Just, don't be a dick about it. Like, these stories don't mean don't believe victims. You're never going to just hear me say, don't believe victims. That was ridiculous. We try to identify bad faith actors spinning false narratives to serve themselves and also have the understanding that we don't always have the full context. We don't have all the details. We don't always see all the evidence. Sometimes there is no evidence. People like Sherri Papini ultimately hurt the credibility of victims though, because even if her allegations against Keith were true, she still managed to instead victimize Latina and Hispanic women with a completely false narrative. And she also created a whole false kidnapping story and deliver a crushing blow to her community that was genuinely trying to help her. Unfortunately, not everyone in the world is operating from a place of good faith, and sometimes it's increasingly difficult to find who belongs in the Suspool, but we try, right? We try. So I think at the end of the day, it's better for me to just leave this story with some words from the man who was probably most affected by this, Keith.
You got to surround yourself with a good support system. And I think keeping busy in terms of if you're into hiking or if you're into paddleboarding or whatever your activity is, you need that time to process. And I, as a father, I have my kids and I need to be there for them. I can't sit there and pout and poor me and, she did all these things and lied to me. I loved my wife. I did everything I could for her and I didn't want this. I didn't want this life. I wanted to be married, and
You know, obviously I was devastated. I'm not going to say it didn't hurt, didn't sting, but you got to move on. You can't sit there and mope all day. That's not going to be healthy for you.
Okay, Susperians, time to step out of the dark waters of the cesspool. Grab a towel and dry off. That's what I got. If you want to hear more stories like this, be sure to subscribe to this channel and go ahead and give it a little goo and tickle the like button, okay? Give her a little compliment. Tell her she looks cute today. Aha, we like her. And also let me know in the comments if you have any stories that you'd like to dip into. I love getting requests from you. Also, be sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter, linked below. That's where I post most often and also announce opportunities to have your thoughts featured in my deep dives on my main channel, Swoop. I have a brand new full deep dive Swoop documentary out on my main channel. Again, it's called Swoop. It's linked below and in the pinned comment. I highly recommend that you watch that one after this. Also, be sure to grab your very own pieces from the Valid Ribcage and Valid Social Club collection in the Petty University shop that is linked below as always. I just know you're gonna love these pieces. I get so excited when I get messages from you and photos from you, just sharing you enjoying it and feeling good in these pieces that are just there meant to support and make you feel good and, you know, like the amazing person that you are. I believe that we can like wear positive messaging and it might make other people who read it, you know, around you also feel a little bit better in their day. Also, the first official Suspool apparel is coming very, very soon. I have been working so long. I don't even know how long. It's been a long time, honey, that I've been working on this. So that is coming very soon. So stay tuned for that. Be sure to check out Factor 75 and head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code SWOOP250. That's SWOOP TOO50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders. That's code SWOOP250 at factor75.com to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month of orders because you deserve it, honey. Thanks for coming for a swim. Have a good day out there. Keep it creepy, keep it cute, and I'll see you next time in the cesspool. Swoop!